Follow these tips if you want to interview well. And the first is that you need to be confident but not arrogant. And that comes down to two things. The first is your body language. You want to be sitting up straight and make sure your shoulders are down and relaxed. You don't want them too high up like this because you look really tense and you also look like you're unsure. Second is your tone of voice. You want to sound a little excited and upbeat. The easiest way to do this is to have a little smile on your face when you're doing it. And you also want to make sure that you're not talking too fast and that you're also not talking too slow. The way to show confidence is to find that nice tempo in the middle. Next, if you want to interview well, don't skip any of your interview questions and ask to come back to them later. The same thing goes with not getting too many follow-up questions. A lot of times I talk to people and they think they actually aced their interviews because they were able to answer all the questions correctly. But in truth, the interviewer needed to ask them so many follow-up questions to get so many additional details that they were actually going to get rejected. So if you can tell that the interviewer is trying to get you back on track, or is trying to reframe the question, or keeps asking you follow-up questions to the first question of the interview, then it means you're not doing well. Here are some examples of follow-up questions you may be getting which could tell you that the interview isn't actually going well. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more on this? Sorry to interject, but I just wanted to ask, is there a way you could rephrase your answer? And what was the result of that? Okay, and what made you decide on that solution? So whose idea was this? Was this yours or was this brought up from someone else? The next way to interview well is to look excited and sound excited whenever they ask you teamwork or culture fit questions. I have examples of those questions up on the screen right here, and as you can see, most of these are pretty easy, and the only way to get these wrong or to fail these questions is to answer them sounding really monotone. These questions are designed to see what kind of person you are, what your personality is, how you fit into the company culture and the team's values. And it basically wants to see if this person has to work with you for 8 to 10 hours a day, do they want to do that? Next, make sure that the majority of your interview answers are focusing on the how or the why you did something. So if you're going to answer a behavioral question using the STAR method, make sure the A or the actions are the longest part of your answer. This is because this is the only way that you can really stand out from everybody else, is to show them how you're able to solve problems, how you're able to think of multiple solutions, which solutions are best given certain context, what are the pros and cons of each situation. Because if you think about it, everyone interviewing for the same job as you is going to have very similar backgrounds, and they're all going to claim to have very similar results or impact on the business. So how are they really going to choose who's the best candidate? The only way to stand out is in your how and your why. Next, make sure your interview answers aren't too short or too long. If you're answering a behavioral question, like tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker, you want your answer to be somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. If you're less than 3 minutes, it means you're not giving enough explanation on your how and your why. If you're longer than 5 minutes, it probably means you're giving a lot of unnecessary details that aren't really critical to the story. And if you're answering research questions like tell me about yourself or why do you want to work here, your answer should be somewhere between 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. The next tip to interview well is to make sure that you're able to properly sell yourself without coming across as too arrogant. I made a whole video that you can click right here on how to do that, but basically there's two things you need to do. The first is make sure that you are the perfect fit for the role based on what they're looking for. So make sure you ask them to explain what are some of the key projects that this person would be working on, what are the skill sets that they actually need versus ones that are nice to have. And second is you want to make sure that you're able to impress them and stand out. Figure out what your differentiators are and make those key parts of your story. And if you want help with either of these two things, make sure you sign up for a free strategy session at CareerShakers.com. Next, make sure you are polite to everybody and that you show up on time. It costs you nothing to be nice to everybody, and it makes a really good first impression. To interview well, you also need to make sure you aren't reading your notes during your interview or looking at things on your screen. Especially if you're doing these virtual interviews, interviewers now are really good at telling if you're looking at your notes or referencing something, usually based on how your eye movement is. And there you have 9 ways to interview well, but if I missed something, why don't you put it in the comments down below so we can help the whole community. Thank you all for watching, and don't be afraid to shake things up.